Hey everyone, happy Friday. Just want to say congratulations. We've made it pretty much a full week now doing our distance learning. I know it's been a little bit of a transition for all of us. I just want to say I'm really proud of you. Everyone seems to be doing a great job with this. So earlier in the week we talked about finding volume of cylinders, then finding dimensions of cylinders. Yesterday we did finding volume of a cone. So today what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how do I find a missing dimension of a cone. So for number one, you're going to notice I have my radius, but they gave me h for a height, and they gave me a volume of 100 inches cubed. So the first thing that we're going to do, because we know that we're using height, the dimension, we're going to write our formula, volume equals pi r squared times h, and then the additional thing that we do for volume of a cone in our formula is to divide it by 3. Where cylinders, it was just pi r squared times h. So I'm just going to plug in what I have, just like with our cylinders that we did to find a missing dimension. Plug in what I have to find my missing dimension. So underneath V for volume, I'm going to write 100 equals pi times my radius squared. We have 9 squared times height divided by 3. And then following our order of operations, I'm going to do my 9 squared. So I have 100 equals pi times 9 squared is 81 times h divided by 3. And then what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves first if I can do 81 divided by 3, because it's easier to do 81 divided by 3 before instead of multiplying both sides by 3. So in my calculator, 81 divided by 3, let's see if that simplifies to a whole number. It does, we get 27, so I'm going to simplify 81 to 27, and 3 just becomes a 1, I'm just going to cross it out. And then I'm going to rewrite that I have 100 equals pi times 27 times h. So the next thing we're going to do is pi 3.14 times 27. So 3.14 times 27. And I get 84.78. So I have 100 equals 84.78 h. And then our last step to get h by itself, I'm just going to divide both sides by 84.78. So in my calculator, 100 divided by 84.78, I'm going to hit equals. And we get about, I'm going to round to the nearest tenth, so I get about 1.2. So my height, I'm going to write height equals 1.2, and then my units are going to be just inches because it's the dimension and not the volume. Alright. Looking over at number 2, it's a little bit different than number 1 because you're going to notice, yes, we're still looking for the height. They give us a volume. However, here they give us the diameter. So the first thing I need to do is turn this diameter to the radius. And hopefully you're thinking, in order to get the radius when we're given the diameter, we need to divide by 2. So 10 divided by 2, I'm going to cross this out. It's going to become 5 centimeters for my radius. So I'm going to write my formula. Volume equals pi r squared times h divided by 3. I'm going to plug in 250 for my volume equals pi times my radius of 5 squared times h divided by 3. And then we're going to do our 5 squared. So we get 250 equals pi times 5 squared is 25 times h divided by 3. Now, unlike the first problem where we were able to simplify our radius when we squared it, I cannot divide 25 by 3 to get an even number. So what we're going to do to get rid of this 3 on this side is we're going to multiply both sides by 3. I'm going to show what cancels on the right hand side. And then 250 times 3 is going to give us 750 equals pi times 25. times our height, which is what we're looking for, our missing dimension. So in our calculator, we're going to do 25 times 3.14, or 3.14 times 25. We get 78.5. So I have 750 equals 78.5 times h. And then our last step to get h by itself, just like in the first example, I'm going to divide both sides by 70.5. So I have 750 divided by 78.5 equals, and we get about 9 point, I'm going to round to the nearest tenth, so we have about 9.6. So I'm going to show it cancels, and then up top I'm going to write that my height equals about 9.6 centimeters. Alright, so those are the two ways we can find the height, either if we're given the radius or if we're given the diameter. Alright, so next we're going to talk about the two examples of, well, what do I do if I need to find the radius when the volume and the height? So the first thing we're going to do, just like with all of our problems, is rewrite our formula. Volume equals pi r squared times the height divided by 3. And then I'm just going to replace in my formula what I have and substitute that in to find my missing radius. So this is going to become, volume is 200 equals pi times radius squared, we don't know what the radius is yet, times 15 divided by 3. And then if you notice, we can simplify 15 divided by 3. I can divide this. Instead of multiplying 3 to both sides like we just did in example 2, 15 divided by 3 is going to become 5. And I'm just going to cross out the 3 because that becomes a 1. And that's gone. So the only thing left that we can do on the right hand side is pi 3.14 times 5. So in my calculator I have 3.14 times 5. And we get 15.7. So I'm going to bring down 200 equals, we have 15.7 times the radius squared. So our next step to get radius squared by itself is we're going to divide by 15.7 on both sides. So I have 200 divided by 15.7 equals, and I get about, rounding to the nearest tenth, 12.7. So I'm going to show it cancels, bring down my radius squared equals about 12.7. And then our last step, hopefully you're thinking of it, to get this radius by itself, we need to do the inverse of squaring the radius, which would be to take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both the left and right side, show it cancels. So I have second, hit the x squared, and then I'm going to type in 12.7. And we get about 3 point round to the nearest tenth, 3.6. So up top here I'm going to write that my radius equals about 3.6 meters. It's going to be my units. Alright, and then our final example, I have my volume is 320 millimeters cubed. I have a height of 20 millimeters, and again we're going to be looking for the radius in this problem. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite my formula. Volume equals pi r squared h divided by 3. I'm going to replace v with 320 equals pi r squared times our height of 20 divided by 3. Now, unlike the problem we just did, I could divide 15 by 3 and simplify. I cannot divide 20 by 3 to get a whole number, so what we're going to have to do is, to get rid of this 3, we're going to multiply both sides by 3, because right now it's being divided by 3. So the inverse of divide by 3 would be to multiply both sides by 3. Show what cancels. We have 320 times 3, which is going to give us 960 equals pi r squared times 20. Then our next step, we're going to have to multiply pi 3.14 times 20. So on my calculator, 3.14 times 20. We get 62.8. So I'm going to bring down 960 equals pi times 20 just became 62.8 radius squared. And then to get radius squared by itself, we're going to divide sides by 62.8. So on my calculator, I have the volume 960 divided by 62.8 equals, we get about 15.3 equals my radius squared. So again, to get the radius by itself, we're going to do the inverse of squaring it, which would be to take the square root. Because again, we're asking ourselves what number times itself gives us 15.3. So in order to figure that out, I'm going to hit second x squared, type in 15.3 and hit equals. And we get about 3.9. So my radius equals about 3.9 millimeters. So what we've covered is how do we find the height for the first two, if we're given the radius or if we're given the diameter. And then for numbers 3 and 4, we looked at how do we find the radius. One, if we're given a dimension for height that we can simplify by 3. One, we're given a dimension that we cannot simplify by 3, so we had to multiply both sides by 3. Alright, I hope this helps today. What you're going to do today after you view this video, I have a Google form where you're going to answer 4 questions on how to find missing dimensions of a cone. And then I have a quizzes that you're going to use as a review for volume and dimensions of cylinders and volume and dimensions of cones as well. Alright. If I don't hear from you, I hope you have a great weekend. Great job again this week with our new distance learning. Again, if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me. It's easiest if you use the remind because I get that immediately, almost like a text message. Alright, thanks. See you.